is Hunter, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Samsung Galaxy S21 Fan Edition 5G phone. So, in having the phone for over a year, my initial impression of it has changed some, especially with the battery life. So I would go into each different category to give you guys more of an outlook of it, because I know some of you tell me that you're interested in buying the phone, and then some of you have already purchased the phone and are new to it. So I thought I'd just give you a basic overlook of how the phone is working for me so far, and then give you some stats and specs along the way, just so you can have a more informed decision if you're just trying to learn more about the phone. My first impression of the phone was pretty high, since the previous phone that I had was an older model and it was purchased back in 2017. It's the Samsung Galaxy J3 Merge. So to have a big jump in the upgrade kind of influenced my first impression. I thought it was originally going to be like metal, kind of like the S21 that has like the part of it's like gold, and then it's the metallic color. But this one is all just a plastic back, which I didn't like at first, but again, I still like the color. When you touch the back of the phone, because it's plastic, it leaves fingerprint smudges if you have any oils on your hands or lotion or anything like that, but that doesn't really bother me as much now since I use a case all the time, so I don't really have an issue with fingerprints. When I bought it, I got the olive green color, as you guys can see, and I like it now, but originally was thinking about buying the phone. I wanted purple, but they didn't have that in stock at the moment, so I went with olive green. So what comes with the phone? When you first get it, you'll get the manual or the user guide, as well as the SIM's ejector pin and the cable. It's a USB-C type, and then the phone. So there's no adapter in there, so you'll have to buy that outright, either from Samsung or from another provider. But I like that the phone was lightweight, and also it had a large display. This display is 6.4 inches, which is pretty decent, and it has smooth scrolling, which I'll get into later. Okay, now moving on to the battery life. When I first purchased the phone, I noticed that it would last between 2 to 3 days without having to be charged again, but that was back when I didn't have a lot of apps or storage on there. I was just kind of exploring different things, but not constant use of like heavy or high activity apps, so I didn't really get to test the battery life. I will say that like when I'm using YouTube, the battery doesn't drain that often. It's more like social media such as like Instagram or maybe even TikTok that will drain the battery. And of course, like if you're going to be using this phone for gaming, it does have smooth scrolling, but that could be an issue with the battery draining quite quickly, and you'll have to charge it that day. Even when I'm filming, I noticed that the battery would drain quicker and it would get a little hot. It wouldn't get as hot as like a laptop, which would like burn your legs, but it does get a little hot when it's going through a bunch of different apps. And sometimes I don't close out all my apps, so I'd have a bunch up. Only good thing about it is that I never experienced like buffering. Even if I had a bunch of apps open, I'd still be able to perform. It's just the battery was draining much quicker than it had originally. Again, I wasn't really using it a whole lot. I was mainly just watching shows like Project Runway or things like that. So if you're interested in the Samsung Galaxy series, I would recommend, and the battery life is a big concern to you, you might want to look to the S23, because based on the reviews I've seen, they kind of fixed that battery issue, and have a better battery for this edition versus the S21 FE. Some of you were curious about the battery life and the screen time, so I took some screenshots of my daily usage in between like February to May of this year, just to kind of show you what it looks like. As far as screen time, 9 as the highest of my screen time to 4 hours of screen on time being like the lowest, and then the highest being around 13 hours of screen off time, and then the lowest being maybe 7 to 5 hours off. To say kind of what my average screen time is, it's around between 7 to 9 hours of screen on time. Well, sometimes I don't use my phone that often, but I say the more busier days. But I'll paste that on the screen so you can see. And then I also did a benchmark test, so if you were curious about how it's ranking after a year, I'll put that up on the screen so you can see that as well. But basically, like, the battery life and the screen off, screen on time kind of goes hand in hand, but it depends on what apps you're really using quite frequently to know whether or not this phone would be a good fit for you. So now let's move on to the cameras. So for the front and rear cameras, there's 1 in the front and then 3 in the back, and the selfie camera is 32 megapixels. The back 3 cameras, there is a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, 12 megapixel wide angle camera, and then an 8 megapixel telephoto camera. And so I mainly shoot in the 12 megapixel wide angle camera, which is the one in the middle. That one usually gives me the clear resolution when I'm using the main default for that. However, this phone can also shoot up to 4K. What I liked about this phone in particular was the camera quality. So it can shoot in Ultra HD or full high definition. And it gives you options if you want to shoot in 30 frames per second or 60. And I think there's also an option for 24, but I usually stick to 30 frames per second because I find that that's more easy on the eyes, and 60 can look a little too busy for the basic videos that I'm shooting. However, one of the things that I noticed is that the phone, not only when you're viewing things on it, but filming, it seems to be a little bit more saturated in color than versus if you transfer that video or photo onto a different device. But you can change like the resolution on the displays. It doesn't bother me that much, but I just wanted to note that. And the quality of the camera, some of you even asked like what I'm filming on some of my videos, so it's usually this phone, but sometimes it's like either my camera or another phone. It was cool to me to see that they put in different features or settings for the camera, like night vision. I don't like that one as much as trying to take like images of like say the moon or the stars at night. I think it's mainly for taking photos of people or objects like inside the home that are like within a close range to you, and just making them brighter. But if you're trying to take night photos or pictures of the moon, you can with this phone. I would recommend not using the night mode for that and just stick with the regular settings and use like 30 zoom. And that's kind of how on my community posts I was able to get pictures of the moon. They're not the clearest photos, but they're pretty good versus what I thought I'd be able to get. So I'll link the community post in the description down below if you want to see the other photos, but here's just kind of like a reference between the S21 FE and then like my Canon camera. And since I film with this phone a lot, I noticed that the camera is pretty stable. However, the only thing I don't like as much is the selfie camera, because I feel like it tries to over sharpen an image sometimes. which I don't like as much camera, so I usually use the rear when I'm taking photos, even selfies or anything like that. Next, I wanted to touch on some of the pros and cons for the phone. I'll start with the pros. It would be the color of the phone. I really like the olive green now that I've had it for longer. Video quality is really nice. So another thing that I really like about the phone is the 120 hertz smooth scrolling. So it makes reading on this phone very easy. I often get books. I don't always finish them, but I often get like digital books on my phone, as well as if I'm like using a recipe to make something, it makes it a lot easier and it's not choppy looking. The current OS update that I have is the Android 13. I think originally when I first purchased the phone it was like on 11, but supposedly we're supposed to have 3 years of software updates and then 4 years of security. Some of the cons that I have for the phone would be, since it's a fan edition, I thought that they might add a headphone jack output. The only output there is for the USB-C charging cable. For those of us that like to use headphones instead of like earbuds, there's not really an option unless you buy like another adapter to like connect it into the USB-C charging port. So you'll have to use Bluetooth unless you want to buy that extra piece in order to use the wired headphones that you already have. It has two SIM card slots, so you can toggle in between your two SIM cards, whether you have different phone numbers or things like that. But I wish that you could also put like an SD card in the phone. That way, if you bought the smaller storage version and wanted to add more storage, you could. I don't really like the finger smudging, but that doesn't really matter if you're using a case on it. And then it was originally priced at, I believe, $699, but the phone only came out 3 or 4 months before the S22, which kind of makes it obsolete, but that price point didn't really fit with all of the features, especially the battery life. I would definitely try to find some type of promotional deal or discount instead of buying it outright. At the current price, I believe is $499. Let me see. Okay, after a year and some months, the current price of the phone is $599. At that price, I wouldn't recommend buying the phone, but if you can find some type of promotion or bundle to buy the phone and maybe perhaps get Galaxy Buds or a trade-in offer, I would definitely go that route with your phone provider. I've seen that there's not as many bundles or things going on with this phone just because it came out so close to the S22 and then now the 23 is already out. So if you're considering this phone still, I would try to see if there's some type of discount that you can possibly get for the phone instead of paying $600 for it now. However, another thing that one of my viewers pointed out was this is going to be the last fan edition. If you're into that sort of thing, that might be a reason why you buy it. Personally, for me, it's not that big of a deal to me to buy a phone just because it's the last fan edition, but that was like an interesting fact to know that it's going to be the last fan edition for now. Okay, some cool features that I liked about the phone is that one, in the new UI 1 5.1 update, they've added live captioning as well as transcribing. I haven't really used those too much to know how well they work, but that is a cool feature to have. Watching videos, I want to see how that one works in particular. And then it can also power share, so if you have another wireless device that can do wireless charging, you can place that on top of the phone and then it will start charging that piece. I would show you an example of it, but unfortunately right now I don't have another device that does wireless charging to show you how that works. But that was a cool feature. I can translate it, so like extract the text, whether it's handwriting or like a label on a product, and if it's in a different language I can also translate it to see what it says. So I thought that feature was really cool. Most phones have this feature, like when you're using like YouTube, but it'll still have like a mini player, so that way you can go on different websites. But I also like they have a split screen feature where you can either pop out the app or whatever into a small box while you're scrolling through other things on your phone, or you can actually split the screen in half to have maybe like an article up here and then a video down there or something. Cool feature that I don't really test out that much is that it's water resistant. Sometimes I do get water in my phone, but because I have a screen protector and a case on all the time, I don't really see how well it works, but I've seen people like dunk their phones in water and it works still fine. Moving on to like add-on costs for accessories or adapters. For this phone, there will be add-on costs because you need an adapter that is USB-C type, and that doesn't come with the phone. I purchased my travel adapter 25 watts on Amazon, but you can also use a wireless charger if you want. And then I also had to buy earbuds because I just didn't have any. I can't use like wired headphones anymore because there's no headphone jack, but that's pretty much every phone now. But I just picked these ones up from Amazon, a neutral color, and they last pretty long time. And then I would highly recommend using a screen protector just to make sure that your phone doesn't crack. And then cases, I'll link the ones that I purchased if you're interested in those. But make sure when you're buying any phone case that it says S21 FE, because there is the S21 Plus and just the regular S21, and they're all different sizes. So make sure that when you're buying a case it says FE, otherwise it won't fit your phone. If you're wanting your phone to match like your earbuds and your accessories, you can do that, but just know that it's at an added cost. And the bundles that they previously had when the phone was brand new, they don't really have those anymore. So I would just consider that. So is it worth it? I would say yes, this phone is worth it, and that'd be probably for the average person buying it. If you're going to be doing heavy gaming, I think it can keep up with it. However, you're going to experience battery draining and the battery not lasting as long as you had hoped. But other than that, it has great features like the camera, as well as different features that make it easy to cook or just scroll through different apps and not go too slow. I really like the smooth scrolling, and it has a lot of different updates, like there's new ones for the camera and things like that. So overall, I would say it is a good phone to have, but if you're not someone that has to have the newest update, the newest version, but if the battery not lasting as long as you'd like is a big draw for you, I would recommend choosing a newer version or a different phone in general, knowing that the battery life isn't going to be as durable or consistent as you might have hoped. If I had to give it a ranking, I would probably say 4.3 out of 5 because I really think it is a decent flagship phone. It's just that the battery draining is an issue, and based on what some of the viewers were saying about their screen time, I'm experiencing longer hours of screen on time versus like just 4 hours, but that might be because I have the Snapdragon versus the other chip. If you're buying it in the US, most likely you'll get the Snapdragon, and then I think it was like in the UK or other countries outside of the US that was mainly using that other chip. If I missed anything, you guys can definitely leave a comment or let me know in the community post or anything like that so I can address it or answer your questions about it if you still have some. But I hope this review kind of gave you an overall look at the phone and gave you more information about the specs and everything.